Hey everyone, welcome to a new week. Thank you for joining me again this week, and as promised I released this video as early as I had said I would. I hope you've watched last week's video where I explained what freehand cutting is, because this week we are talking about the negatives and the positives, basically pros and cons of using freehand cutting as a method to make your clothes. Because I've been in the industry for a while, I have seen the benefits of knowing how to do freehand cutting. It's helped me a lot, especially when I'm making one-off clothes for customers, and especially if the metric system is not really working in how I am trying to make the outfit. Because the metric system was designed for a specific body type, which is mostly European. But with our African curves and people of different body sizes and everything like that, sometimes it doesn't really work unless you really know how to adapt those patterns into different body types. And culturally, I will not lie to you, we do not do mock-ups in Africa. We don't. People will not pay extra for a mock-up unless it's a very, very technical thing you're making for them. So most of the time, we cut the fabric one and done. You get an order, you don't make a sample first so that someone can come and fit it and then you make the fabric. Unless it's a very technical design and you insist on it, it's very, very rare. So that is why freehand cutting is also very, very popular on the continent. Anyway, that being said, the disadvantages are also there, especially if you're going to get into ready to wear, because you need to do sizing and you need to grade your patterns and do things like that. So we're going to discuss it. So check out this week's video as I proceed to show you in slide form, and maybe you will decide whether it's worth adapting or not. And of course, there are always elements of it that really work, especially if you watch a lot of sewing tutorials from Nigerian creatives who make clothes. You will always find that they're always using freehand cutting, and you see sometimes it does work, and it works for them. It's a method they are used to. It's fast. It releases them from overthinking about how to do something and things like that. So if you watch a lot of sewing videos like I do, and you watch from all over the world, you will always see people who have more technical training, people who have more artistic training, people who wing it and it works, people who experiment. Like generally you can be able to tell from the training of somebody based on how the sewing tutorial goes. So let's get into the pros and cons for this week's video. We'll start with the pros. So the first pro is creativity. Freehand patterns allow for greater creativity and flexibility in design. Designers can create unique shapes, lines, and silhouettes without being constrained by pre-made templates. Because if you are in the dressmaking or fashion sector, you'll realize that there are some very basic silhouettes that are usually used in the industry, and especially if you're the type who buys patterns, you're restricted to some of the confinements of that pattern. So freehand kind of gives you a lot of leeway to experiment and to create and to go crazy with what you are doing. Freehand patterns also allow you to customize. They're ideal for customizing garments that fit the individual measurements and preferences, and the results can be better fit. It really just depends on the skill of the person making the outfit. The reason I say this is from even my own personal experience using the metric patterns and trying to adjust it to my size. You find that because I am more curvy, it's very difficult to kind of customize metric pattern to your body, because they are made to be standardized. They are made to fit a wide variety of people who may fit into those patterns. I have eventually learned how to adjust them, but sometimes I find it so much easier just to use the freehand pattern, make it exactly to my size, customize it, make it fit well, and use it. There is an element of efficiency while you're doing freehand cutting, because it makes you basically use less
materials such as paper, and it saves time and resources generally. So it's very efficient. If you're very, very good at doing it on the cloth, it's very, very good. Sometimes I feel like freehand cutting is in between pattern drafting and draping, but it's also an art form in itself. So it can be very, very efficient if you're very, very good at manipulating fabric and understanding how clothes should look on a body. Freehand patterns are very adaptable and versatile to various fabrics, body types, and design concepts, and they allow designers to experiment with draping, manipulation, and other creative techniques. As I had said earlier, the beauty of freehand cutting is that you kind of mix different techniques into what you're doing. So if you're very, very good at manipulating fabrics and doing things like that, you can really go crazy, and it's very, very adaptable, and it's also a lot of fun. Artistic expression. Working with freehand patterns is a form of artistic expression for many designers. It offers hands-on approach to design, allowing them to sculpt, shape fabric in real time. I have also noticed that a lot of people who do upcycling really love to use freehand cutting to make their clothes. Sometimes they cut from an outfit they already own and use it as a pattern and cut. That's usually the simplest way to basically cut clothes. And yes, so artistic expression is also a very big advantage. So let's look at the cons. So one of the cons is skill requirement. So freehand pattern making requires a high level of skill and experience. It can be very challenging for less experienced designers or tailors, especially those who are used to making clothes with the traditional pattern making methods, which is the metric method. And you will also notice that the issue with this is that most tailors are taught how to make clothes with freehand cutting, and you can easily tell a very skilled tailor based on how well they use this method to make clothes. And because unfortunately on the continent tailoring is perceived as a school dropout career, if you're not good at memorizing the freehand cutting instructions and then adapting it to clothes and patterns and all that, it comes at a very big disadvantage, because people are expecting you to survive based on this simple thing, as they call it, called making clothes, which is not. It actually is a very highly skilled job, and it really does need a lot of skill to grow in it. Generally, if you have experience with pattern drafting, it might not be as difficult. You'll just find it a bit too simplified, but definitely it does require skill, despite the fact that people think it doesn't. Another disadvantage could be consistency, because you cannot really create multiple garments using the freehand cutting method. So if you're trying to do a ready-to-wear collection and you're trying to use freehand cutting, your clothes are not going to be similar, even if you're trying to make with the metric sizing, but you're using a freehand method. You'll find that it's very, very difficult for you to reproduce the same size pattern. So freehand cutting is definitely not good for consistency, especially when creating multiple garments that you're working with, or even very complex designs. With very complex designs, you definitely need more pattern drafting. So that's the issue with freehand cutting. Repeatability. Freehand patterns may not be easily replicable, especially for mass production. This can be limiting when you're trying to produce designs for larger quantities. So you'll find that sometimes, even if you did cut a design successfully and somebody else wants it, even if it's not for mass production, you'll find that you will definitely change some elements of it, because you're not really keeping track of the collar was 5 inches, the sleeve was 7 inches and all that. You'll find that you will definitely make some changes. Some things will vary in size. So repeatability is very difficult with freehand cutting method. Then there is accuracy. Without the guidance of pre-made templates, there's a risk of errors in cutting and shaping the fabric. This can lead to wastage of materials and even a lot of time wasted spending on correcting and altering the design. So your accuracy may be very, very limited if you're just cutting directly on the fabric. Lastly, it's complexity. It's definitely not the last point, but for my countdown, complexity is definitely an issue with freehand pattern making, and it's also time consuming for intricate and highly structured design. It may require more trial and error to achieve the desired result. And the issue is, if you go to someone who's not very skilled at it, they really struggle to get the design, or they'll take a lot of time before they figure out how to do it, because technically, as I said, a lot of people who use freehand cutting are tailors and they're not technically trained. Most of them learn from apprenticeship, so you find that their skill is limited to who they learned from, unless they're lucky enough to work with a fashion designer and learn other aspects of pattern making. They really do tend to struggle with very complex and structured designs that cannot really easily be cut just on fabric. So complexity is definitely another point.
So from the video you could see that freehand cutting is not ideal for everybody, and it's not ideal for everything, but it is still a good skill to know. So depending on your goals for your business and what you want to achieve, and basically how you want to grow your brand, especially if you're getting into ready to wear or you want to go to custom made, the information shared in the 2 videos about freehand cutting, I'm sure, has helped you one way or another. So thank you so much for watching these videos. Don't forget that if you need patterns, instructions on how to do freehand cutting, if you really want to learn about it and to adapt it into your business or hobby, I am selling them for $5, and it is front and back for tops, top, skirt, dress, and a sleeve pattern. So the instructions are very easy to follow, and I'm sure you'll find it beneficial. So email me and I will send it to you. It's just $5 for all of those. So for Kenyans, M-Pesa. For everybody else, PayPal, unless you can figure out M-Pesa. There are, of course, there are very many other options of sending M-Pesa to Kenya. So if you find like your country has that option, you can use that. Thank you so much for watching this, and I will see you next month in March. Bye.